I'm KETK Meteorologist Carson Vickroy, and thank you for joining us for this live stream. Very important, we have warned for a severe weather alert day, and that is valid as we go into tonight. First off, this is what we have outside right now. There's really no concerns with the weather yet, but this will begin to change as we move into this evening, probably after about 7, 8 o'clock. And with some of the data that's come in, it could be a little later than that. But that's what we have in Longview currently, and we will continue to see some sunshine here over the next couple of hours. This is not necessarily good news. Well, it's good news if you have those outdoor plans for the afternoon or even later this morning. But what this is doing is it's increasing the amount of available energy in the atmosphere for those severe thunderstorms to get going as we move into the overnight hours. Now, the good news is these storms are going to occur in the overnight hours, which means that should at least limit instability just a little bit. But the bad news is they're also occurring at night, which means nocturnal thunderstorms. They can be pretty intense, and it's kind of hard to warn for them with everybody being asleep, so you do need a way to get weather information. Upper 60s in Longview. Dew point is at 57. Winds are out of the south at 8 miles per hour, so not a ton of wind energy yet, but as you can see here in downtown Longview, those winds are beginning to pick up just a little bit. That combined with rising dew points, all those ingredients are going to come together for our severe weather threat. But here are your temps right now. It is already 70 in Tyler, 64 in Mineola. Any precipitation is ongoing to our north. It's covered by the banner right now, but there are a couple of showers and thunderstorms that are taking note on radar up in Oklahoma and Arkansas. Other than that, we're just fine. Upper 60s, lower 70s, and it does look like we will at least be in the lower 80s for today. We were in the middle 80s yesterday, but today it is possible that we see 80s, and the warmer we get, the more instability that we're going to have to work with. So you usually consider 3 ingredients when you're looking at a severe weather threat. One is lift. That usually comes from a front, which we will have one approach the area. It's not going to clear the area, but it's going to approach the area. 2, it's this Gulf moisture that continues to increase. And the third, I just talked about the amount of instability that you have in the atmosphere. Let's go ahead and talk about the moisture real fast. This is what we have. Low-level moisture is beginning to increase just a bit. And as you can see, we've got middle 60s for dew points. Dew points have risen to about 59 degrees in Tyler, 57 in Longview, and eventually that will increase the threat of severe thunderstorms as those storms begin to increase as we head into the overnight hours. So the severe weather threat you see, this is valid as we head into tonight. Now, I will get to more specific timing, but anytime we do have an enhanced risk of severe weather, it does require your attention because you need to remain weather aware because some of these storms could be on the strong to considerable size as far as damaging storms go. 70-mile-per-hour winds can't be ruled out with this one, and also the possibility of a few isolated tornadoes. So let's break down FUTURECAST. Again, FUTURECAST kind of represents an idea of when and where the storms are going to occur, and at times how severe those storms are going to be. But it is not an exact calculation of what exactly will occur, which means we could have these storms vary by an hour or so. We could have the intensity vary as well. It's just something that we're keeping a close eye on because tonight, the general idea is we will have thunderstorms, but the questions remain, is it going to occur for you at 9? Is it going to occur for you at 10? Is it going to occur for you at 11 o'clock? Well, this is the model run that was run, Fox 51 Good Day at about 8 o'clock, and this is the latest scan. This is 5 o'clock. You can see some bubble-up showers and thunderstorms. Those could actually be some pretty potent hail makers there out to our west, but these will consolidate just a little bit. And as we head into this evening, we will start to see the showers and thunderstorms fire to our west. You can see them right there on the screen, still confined to the DFW area, but as we move into about 10 o'clock, I do expect some of these storms to start impacting our far northern counties. And we also have those storms still moving through areas to the south of DFW Airport, and those will slowly move into our region. This is about midnight tonight. The severe weather threat, it will be in full effect And any of these little Boeing segments you see here, what the model is trying to tell us is those could be storms that contain a lot of strong winds. So even though we may not necessarily have the tornado threat that we had just a couple of weeks ago, if you remember correctly, there were 7 tornadoes confirmed in our area, we're still going to have a pretty high damaging wind threat because of the Boeing segments that are going to occur in this broken line of thunderstorms. But the good news is the tornado threat's not as high because it does not appear at this time that we are going to have those individual storms that tend to spin up and can create those stronger tornadoes. But nonetheless, the tornado threat is there because of the just varying directions of the winds that we're going to have. Now, as we move into about 2 o'clock, the main threat is continuing to move off to the east. You can still see that for parts of Arkansas and northern Louisiana here. And then for Smith County pointing off to the east, that's when we're going to start to see that primary threat move off into Louisiana. But there's the front. Notice it just stops. That's what our surface analysis product with our systems are showing. And if it does that, if it stalls, we're still going to be warm. We may even be a little humid tomorrow afternoon, but probably not quite as humid as today, which should really freeze any severe weather chance that we might have tomorrow. But storms will continue to move from west to east. That rain will move into Louisiana. And by 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, that severe weather threat, it's effectively over. But we're still watching that line of storms, and it's going to retreat off to the west. I should say we're watching the cold front. We're not watching the line of storms, but we're watching that cold front. And because the front's going to remain off to the west, it's still going to allow relatively strong winds to pump warmer air in. But notice, not as much Gulf moisture to work with, which is good news because, I mean, that would be 2 consecutive days if we had that moisture of severe weather possibilities. But here is the damaging wind probability for today. And what the Storm Prediction Center does is they weigh this by percentages. About a 30% chance, for example, that a severe wind-producing thunderstorms occurs within 25 nautical miles. That's what we have here in the red. So those storms I showed you on FUTURECAST, I do think FUTURECAST is doing a very good job of predicting the future of this, but particularly in our central and northern counties, that's where I do expect some of these stronger storms to occur. And anytime you have damaging straight line winds, that really weighs down on power lines. Trees can fall on power lines. We have lots of trees here in East Texas, so that is a constant problem we have, even with 60-mile-per-hour wind storms. Now, my forecast is suggesting that we could have 70-mile-per-hour winds, but again, the best chance of that happening is going to be in the red. And what this tells me is, yeah, we're going to have some pretty intense storms, so you do need to be weather aware for tonight. Now, the tornado probability, it's not 0. I do expect, at least some of the area will be under a tornado warning or 2. Doesn't necessarily mean a tornado is going to occur, but there is still enough spin and energy available in the atmosphere, low-level moisture included, that we could see 1 or 2 tornadoes as well. So you need to not only be prepared for the damaging wind threat, you also need to be prepared for the tornado threat. But this should be a weaker end tornado threat. The damaging winds, I mean, that could be a weak grade tornado as well if we're seeing them 70, gusting up to 80 at times. That's equivalent to a prolonged period of EF0 to EF1 winds. But regardless, same areas with that wind distribution for our central and northern counties. That's why you see the tornado threat that you see. Now, the hail probability, it's a little bit on the lower side. And as I mentioned, in the afternoon, when you have those really strong updrafts, that's where we're going to see the primary threat of some damaging and severe hail. But a little further off to the east for us, the hail threat's less, but I could still not rule out the possibility of quarters and half-dollar sized hail. So basically, if you still carry change around in your pocket, a lot of us have moved away from that, but pocket change sized hail, that certainly can't be ruled out for now. But it is something that could change, and we'll keep you updated if anything were to change with that. But there's your hail threat. Heavy rain, it's possible too. That's why I have it at a medium. Tornado threat's medium, large hail threat is medium But the damaging wind gusts, that takes the cake for today. You notice the Boeing segments, and meteorologist Andrew Samet, meteorologist Marcus Bagwell, they'll be tracking the storms, and one of the things they do really well is pointing out those things that are presented on the radar, like your hook echoes, that would mean a tornado. Your bow echoes, that is when there's a threat of damaging winds. But when the storms bulge out from each other, as we showed on FUTURECAST recently, that's where you're going to see the primary threat of damaging winds. But again, that is a medium to high on your East Texas storm team scales there. But once again, that is something that we will have to watch out for, but it's mainly a late night event, which is why I'm concerned that a lot of people are going to be sleeping. So have a way to wake yourself up if a warning is issued for your area. And if you've got a stubborn family member or a stubborn friend that you notice is under a warning, but they're like, we always see warnings here in East Texas, right? Nothing ever happens. Well, generally, this is true, but sometimes things can get out of hand. We could see damage to households, so we want to keep you safe. So one thing you can do is you can be the hero in that situation and give them a call if a warning is issued for their location. And that's not only for tornado warnings, that is also for severe thunderstorm warnings as well, because some of these severe thunderstorms could contain 70, maybe even gusting up to 80-mile-per-hour winds, and that's a low-end tornado threat that's probably going to last a little longer than a tornado would. It's going to persist a little longer than a tornado would. So this is definitely something that demands your attention, and you're going to want to seek shelter because windows can break, shingles can come off of roofs, and trees can fall on houses as well in situations like this. So that is something we'll have to keep an eye on. But regardless, severe weather alert day, we're not necessarily done with the rain tomorrow morning. Because we could have some lingering showers behind the initial front. So I just walked you through the severe weather threat. One thing I do want to look at is what we're going to see on FUTURECAST one more time, because this is important. I talked about all the things we look for on radar, and FUTURECAST is doing a great job of showing us what exactly could occur in a situation like this with that wind threat. So what we're going to be looking for tonight are what are called Boeing segments, or as meteorologist Andrew Samet likes to say, a backwards C. He does a really good job of explaining you through that. So let's go ahead and show you that on FUTURECAST, because it is predicting some rather strong thunderstorms tonight. First off, you'll notice we're dry at 5 o'clock. If you have those afternoon plans, you can go ahead and do them, but the only thing I ask of you is to come up with that severe weather plan or review your severe weather plan just in case a warning is issued for you tonight. The best chance of hailstorms will be out to our west. There's going to be some powerful updrafts given the amount of instability that they're going to have to the west of Denton there. You can see that along Highway 287. For those that are unfamiliar with Highway 287, it does run through our western counties, but it also runs all the way up to Amarillo and beyond that. I mean, we had a Highway 287 when I lived in Montana, but that's where the main threat of thunderstorms are going to occur. Maybe you lived in DFW. You're probably familiar with the community of Decatur. It's kind of like an East Texas town, but it's Decatur, and that's where the main threat of severe weather is going to be at that point. That's 5 o'clock. As we move into the future, 9 o'clock, we're still seeing these broken showers and thunderstorms. Still some pretty good hailers coming out of these, maybe some strong winds as well. But East Texas, we are still okay. If you're going to be like me watching Kansas take on UNC in the national championship game, just have your East Texas Storm Team app ready, or just have your weather alerts ready on your smartphone just in case something were to change and something develops in front of what FUTURECAST is expecting here. But chances are it's not going to be a problem through about 9 o'clock. Now, as we roll into about 10, notice this. We start to see these lines of storms kind of bow out from just being a straight line. The leading edge of the storm bows out. That is what we're going to be looking out for as far as that damaging wind threats. And it's right on our doorstep. This is between about 10 and 11 o'clock. And the main threat's still going to be north of I-30 at that point. But this is when you need to be ready, because these storms will shoot across the area just based on how fast they're moving. This is midnight tonight. You'll notice still Boeing segment in our northern counties, and then this storm right here showing signs of damaging winds, because you notice it's almost kind of like that backwards C, not quite. It's more of a backwards L, so that would indicate some strong winds on the leading edge between Henderson and Anderson County right there. I believe that would be closer to the Cayuga community if you're familiar with that. But again, I mean, this is not an exact science. It is something that's just an estimation of what might happen around midnight. But these storms, they could produce a lot of lightning and thunder, so they'll probably wake you up. If they don't, have a NOAA weather radio or have an app that's going to wake you up just in case we do have a few warnings, because I do expect a few nocturnal warnings or warnings that occur when most people are sleeping. Now, as we move into about 2 o'clock, still seeing that Boeing segment moving through Arkansas and Louisiana with rather strong storms for our eastern counties. And then anything that occurs behind that initial line, the atmosphere at the surface will probably be worked over pretty well. So they're probably just going to be elevated showers and thunderstorms where the instability is a little higher than from the surface all the way up to the top of the weather-making part of the atmosphere. But it is something that we'll have to keep an eye on. You can still get a little bit of hail out of these thunderstorms behind, and this will be occurring close to daybreak tomorrow morning. But by 8 o'clock, most of that rain's out of here, and then that cold front is going to stall out to the west, which will lead to some very warm conditions for all of East Texas tomorrow. Damaging wind threat, that's the primary here in the red. Of course, I've mentioned 30% chance that a damaging thunderstorm based on wind occurs within a 25-mile radius. And obviously, we've got more than 25 miles here in East Texas. We have about 100 or so miles. So very good chance that we get at least 1 or 2 warnings. Tornado threats there, not quite as high as what we saw a couple weeks ago when we saw all those tornadoes drop, but tornado threats still there. And then that hail probability, it's one of the lesser threats, but it's still there, and I can't rule it out along those lines of thunderstorms that we see set up for tonight. So let's go ahead and show you the timeline of these thunderstorms, and this is subject to change. I'm not 100% confident that we won't have to move these a couple hours later into the future, but this will be a general idea of when the storms are going to move through the region. It's easier to predict this because these are going to be a line of storms and most of the models are in agreement. But if you live in places like Palestine, Athens, Mineola, Tyler pointing off to the west, be ready by 8 o'clock. That's the earliest I expect this line to move through the area, but it may not happen till 10 or 11. That's the start time. And then from about 10 to midnight, that's when we could see the onset of the thunderstorms in our central counties. But again, we may move that from 10 to 12, from 10 to 12 to 11 to 1 here. So we'll continue to fine tune this with the data that's coming in this afternoon. And then midnight and later, that's when you need to be weather aware for our eastern counties. So that's an overview of the timeline. Let me go ahead and show you one more look at the severe weather threats, the individual threats as we like to call them. And as I mentioned, that damaging wind threat, that's the main one. And anywhere from 7 o'clock for the Trinity River Monday all the way over to about 7 o'clock Tuesday for Toledo Bend and Sabine County. That's the timeline. Damaging wind gusts, that's a medium to high threat. Heavy rain, tornadoes, large hail, all in play here, but I think we're going to see more warnings issued for damaging winds rather than warnings for flash flooding, tornadoes, or large hail. But once again, we'll have another update on East Texas Live. That is occurring here in about 40 minutes. I need to get ready for that, but Chief Meteorologist Marcus Bagwell will be doing another special digital stream on KETK.com at 3 o'clock, and then he will be joined by meteorologist Andrew Samet at 8 o'clock, and we will also have more details on the newscast. First, KETK News at 4 and 5, Fox 51 News at 5:30, KETK News at 6. Of course, we have that digital stream at 8 o'clock, Fox 51 News at 9 o'clock, and then KETK Tonight. That starts at about 10. But We'll continue to keep you updated throughout the day. You can follow our social media pages, Meteorologist Carson Vickroy, KETK News, Chief Meteorologist Marcus Bagwell, Meteorologist Andrew Samet, Fox 51 News on Facebook, and then all of our Twitter accounts are there as well. Make it a great day, but always remain weather aware.